Hey, good morning, Pat and Stella, and anybody else who's plugged in. I am glad you guys are here this morning, and I know, Stella, you're going to Gettysburg soon, so I hope you guys have a blast when you go. So if you looked at the thumbnail, those of you who are waiting, we bought ourselves a tractor, and that's the tractor in the thumbnail picture. It's an old tractor, probably about in 1965. Good morning, Ann. Tractors don't come necessarily in years exactly like cars do, so it's not like you can buy. I mean, they may now today, I don't know, but back in the day, like John Deere didn't put out a new 1965 tractor. They would make revisions, but you kind of have to figure out, you have to find the model numbers and figure out what year those model numbers were made. And best as I can tell, it's like a 1964-ish, 1965 John Deere tractor. It's called a 2010. That's the model. It's not the year, obviously. John Deere tractor, and it runs. It was kind of a revolutionary tractor in the States. One of the first 4-cylinder tractors, and kind of changed farming a little bit. It runs the tractor we bought. In fact, Ann, who was up at our farm recently with us, and got to see some of the people who were with us playing with the tractor and learning how to drive it. We bought a tractor for a couple reasons. Number one, we have a farm. Our family has had a farm. Back in 1954, my mom's Uncle Sam, everybody has an Uncle Sam, right? Uncle Sam, who was a professor at Temple University, he and his wife had no kids. They traveled a lot, and they bought a summer home. They bought a farm up in the Wanamaker's area, which is a little town near Kempton, if you know where Kempton is, a slightly bigger town. But yeah, it's about half hour away. Wanamaker's is about half hour away, right at the base of the Blue Mountain. Appalachian Trail runs on top. And it's like 40 acres. And my mom's uncle bought it. And we used to have a lot of family functions there. That side of the family was a big family. None of that generation is left anymore. That would be my grandfather. It was his brother that bought it, Uncle Sam. And there were, I think, 9 or 10 siblings. And man, we used to have some wonderful parties when I was a kid up at that farm. And then Uncle Sam gave it to his brother, my grandfather, because my grandfather was the one who really took care of it for a lot of years. And it was not a nice place when Uncle Sam first bought it. The house was not in good shape. Part of it's an old log cabin. But anyway, roughly 20 acres of fields, and we have never farmed it. The neighboring farmers have always farmed our fields. Never farmed it really. It's just been a getaway, family place to get away. And so it's been in our family since 54. And I am now blessed, extraordinarily blessed. For the last 10 years or so, I've been half owner of that farm. And it's something that's just, it's such a fortunate thing to have it. Good morning, Patrice. Morning, Mom. I am so blessed to have this. It's not something I could ever buy, never be able to buy anything like this. And yet, because of the kindness of several generations of people, Uncle Sam, my grandfather, and my mom, I'm now half owner and have been for about 10 years or so. And you have heard we bought this tractor, this old tractor, for several reasons. One, you've heard me talk a lot about the fact that good morning, Art. Hey, it's wonderful to see you, Art. We miss you and Lisa. We bought this in part because we have for a long time, Don and I have talked about taking advantage of the farm. We have these fields, and Donna loves getting her hand in dirt. I've jokingly said she wants to be a gentleman farmer, and in our backyard, we're now growing all kinds of things. We have a lot of raised beds, growing potatoes. We're experimenting with potatoes and strawberries in our backyard, and Donna loves this kind of stuff. So do I. I enjoy it a lot. And we talked for years. We've been talking for, I don't know, half a dozen years at least, maybe more, about wanting to farm. And I started to realize, we've been chatting about this, and I have looked at tractors. I stop by tractors and look at tractors when I drive by them on the road. And I started to realize, why not pull the trigger on this? The number of years that I have left to actually do these things is getting smaller and smaller all the time, and I didn't want to keep waiting. So found this tractor. Actually, a friend found it for me, Rick Yoakum, who's just, gosh, you can't get a better friend. And found this tractor, looked at it. It runs, needs some work, of course. It's 1965, missing some parts, has an oil leak, etc. But we bought it. And here's the thing. The other reason that I did this, one of the reasons that I did this, bought this tractor and want to start farming, is I am energized by learning new things. I love learning new things. And it energizes me. And when it comes to a tractor and farming, I am starting from scratch. I'm starting from the beginning. In fact, this is really pretty funny. I did drive the tractor when I bought it. I sat on it, and the kid that I bought it from, he and his dad buy John Deere tractors and they restore them. And he had started restoring this one, but he found one that he really wanted. And his mom said, "Hey, the barn is full. If you want a new one, you got to get rid of one." So he sold this one. I'm glad he did. So I drove it. I sat on it and drove it, but the kid was sitting right next to me and telling me what to do. When he dropped it off, he put it on a trailer, dropped it off at our farm. I'm sitting there realizing I had no idea how to drive. I didn't even know how to drive a tractor. This is how little I knew. Tractors are not like driving cars. And the thing about this is there is so much to learn. The learning curve, when you start something new, Estella, I have had her on the tractor. She's not driven it yet, but I'll get her driving it soon. But when you learn something new, there is so much to learn, and you learn in big chunks, and everything is new and it's energizing. Like I said, I didn't even know how to drive this thing. So the day he dropped it off, I realized I am in trouble. I can turn the key on, and I know I drove it, but those gears are confusing. And it's confusing because if you look at the gears, it says it has 8 gears, but really what it has is 4 gears, and each gear has a high and a low speed. And it's not like a car where you put I have a manual. I've always had manuals. It's not like a car where you put the clutch in and then you shift from first, second, third, fourth, fifth. In the case of the Subaru, 6th gear. This is not like a car. Each gear has a high and a low. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't even know how to drive this sucker. And then each gear also, really you've got 4 gears, but each gear has a high and a low. And each gear also has a reverse. So you've got 4 reverse speeds. And so I went on YouTube. I'm sitting at our farm. I pulled up my phone, watched a YouTube video, and I typed into YouTube, how do you drive a 2010 John Deere tractor, an old tractor, not the year 2010, like I said, it's the model. And I watched a YouTube video on how to drive it. And then I went and drove it around the yard, drove it up the road. Good morning, Marianne. Drove up the road, and when we were up for July 4th with some people, with some friends, and Ann was there, I asked a bunch of people wanted to learn how to drive a tractor, so I gave lessons in tractor driving. Got a video of Paula Arner driving the tractor. I think I forget who else, Roxy Borniak, I believe. But so everything is new, and everything I'm learning is new, and I'm having a blast learning. Rick Yoakum, who turned me on to this tractor, he asked me, make sure it has a 3-point hitch. And I didn't even know what a 3-point hitch was. So I had to Google that and found out that basically if you drive a tractor, when you start getting implements for your tractor, you have to have a 3-point hitch. That's what raises and lowers all the implements. And it did not have a 3-point hitch. It has the stuff for it, but it doesn't have the 3-point hitch attached. So I am going online and I'm finding old parts that I can attach for a 3-point hitch. So I got some parts, and this is a chuckle. I got the parts for a 3-point hitch, and I went up to the farm on Sunday afternoon. And I took my parts up there, and I realized that a tractor has bigger bolts than I have wrenches. And I didn't have wrenches big enough. So I couldn't put the parts on, came home, went to Home Depot yesterday, bought some monster wrenches, and man, everything is exciting. Everything is new. And I love this. I love learning new things. It's like I said, you learn in chunks. You learn in these big chunks, and almost everything you're learning you can't learn enough. You can't learn fast enough, and it's exciting. I'm watching all kinds of videos about these John Deere tractors and how to rebuild them, and I'm watching videos about farming, and I'm trying to figure out, what do I want to do? What do I want to grow, and I've talked to farmers, and originally we were thinking, Donna, a lot of people like sweet corn. So we thought, well, it's been a while since anybody had corn growing at our farm. The farmers used to, all of the fields around us used to be in corn all the time. Now they're all in beans, soybeans. After they mow the wheat, the grass, the hay, whatever you want to call it, in the beginning of the year, the winter wheat, they all put soybeans in. So we're surrounded by fields of soybeans. I guess there's a market for soybeans. But, I was thinking, why don't I, maybe I'll put a field in corn. So I talked to farmers, and some of the local farmers said, you know what, if you can't do at least 6 acres of corn, don't even bother, because the deer and the raccoons and the squirrels, they take so much of your corn that if you can't do at least 6 acres, and it's not productive. They eat so much. And that has me rethinking the whole corn idea. So, I'm processing what I want to grow, and even that I've been reading up on what to grow on small farms. Anyway, all that to say that I am learning so much, and it is exciting, and I love learning new things. But what happens is, and you will know this, what happens is after a while, the learning curve slows down, and you don't learn in big chunks anymore. Once you become familiar with something, you can't even drive stick shift. Yeah. Well, we got to teach you how to do that. Driving stick shift is fun. But once you become familiar with something, that learning curve slows, and you start to learn in smaller chunks. The chunks aren't as big. And usually what happens is when you get to a place, where something is very familiar to you, maybe you grew up on a farm, for example, usually you start to learn out of necessity. Everything isn't new anymore, and you start to have to learn. Maybe you're dealing with you're thinking of a new crop, like when people started growing soybeans or hemp. Right now, there's a lot of farmers who are experimenting with hemp. And what happens is farmers will realize, this is a new thing, and they learn out of necessity. And sometimes they're actually like somebody from maybe Penn State will come in, and he'll do a little community gathering for farmers who are interested in growing something new. And then they'll learn that thing, but they learn out of necessity. You don't learn in chunks anymore. You learn in little pieces, and usually it's out of necessity. Here's what I want to talk about this. This is actually true in our faith too. This is very true in our faith. Some of us have grown up in church, and so for many of us, we have never had that beginning to our faith when everything was new, because we've grown up in it. But for people who think about some of the stories in the Gospels where for certain people everything was new. This was true with the disciples, of course, with Jesus. But there's a great story in Luke chapter 8, the story about the Gerasene demoniac, we call him. That's the name of the story. He's a demon-possessed man, crazy man. And Luke chapter 8. And Jesus heals him. And there's this fascinating story that after he's healed, there's this picture of him. It says he sat at the feet of Jesus, and he is soaking up everything Jesus is saying, because it's all new to him. He's been healed, and he doesn't know who this Messiah is. He doesn't know what it means. Why this guy heal me? He's just soaking up faith because it's all new. And then Jesus, after a short period of time, a day or so, I forget how long, Jesus goes to leave, and this man begs to stay with Jesus. He says, please, can I come along? And Jesus actually says, no, go back to your people and tell them about who I am. But there's this sense of it's all new to him, and he's soaking it up, and it's exciting, and he wants to keep learning. And then the great story of Mary and Martha, when the story about Jesus comes to their house, and Martha's busy cooking, and Mary, it says, Mary sat at the feet of Jesus, and she's just soaking up everything Jesus said, partly because it was not normal. In fact, it wasn't, women were not usually considered to be disciples. Women were not treated that way. And here is Jesus who treats women as if they are equally capable of being disciples. And so this is all new to her, what she's learning, and she's soaking it up. She can't get enough. We don't know, I think I've said this before in messages, we don't know of any other ancient rabbi who had a woman as a disciple, but Jesus did. And so Mary's soaking this up. But what happens after a while, the same thing happens in our faith. At first, it's all new and it's exciting, and we're learning in huge chunks. But after a while, the learning curve slows down. And it happens to people a lot. And I've actually had people say to me a lot, many times, people will say, I don't know what's wrong with me. There's something happening to my faith. I used to be so on fire. I used to be so enthusiastic. I would read the Bible every day. I couldn't get enough of it. And I don't have that enthusiasm anymore. And that's normal. That's just normal. Because at first, we were learning, everything was new. We're learning in big chunks. We're learning Jesus. And it's exciting. You can't get enough of this. But then after a while, we stop learning in such big chunks. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's normal. It's actually a sign of maturing in the faith, because now faith and what you know and what you believe, it's now really becoming part of your life. And it is, it's more normal to us. And so it's actually a sign of maturing and maturity that you are not learning in big chunks anymore. There's nothing wrong with that. But we do sometimes it becomes stale. And in the same way that, for example, I talked about farmers, but this is true of anything. Anything new that we've learned. I know when I learned bow hunting, the same thing. At first, everything is new and you're learning in big chunks, but after a while, you're learning in smaller pieces. And it's the same thing is true, that for the most part, you usually start to learn out of necessity. After faith becomes part of your life and you're not learning in big chunks anymore, in the same way that like a farmer has to learn something out of necessity, or a doctor has to learn something out of necessity, the same is true for us. That after a while, when it starts to become stale and we're not learning in big chunks anymore, in many ways, the learning comes out of necessity when we need to know something, we need to learn something. So let me make this suggestion to you as we kind of wrap things up. And I just can't believe how fast the time goes, at least for me. Maybe not for you. But let me suggest that for those of us who have been in the faith for a long time, or for those of us who are new and we're not learning in big chunks anymore, and that initial enthusiasm has worn off, which is just normal. It's just the way it is. Let me suggest to you that that you need to keep learning. And one way to do that is to try to deliberately learn something new about the faith. And because if you learn something new, you're learning out of necessity. So let me give you a couple examples. Maybe you want to learn, this is something a lot of us could do better at. Maybe you want to learn how to talk to people about your faith. We don't really do this. We've kind of given into our culture of, tolerance and everything goes, et cetera. And maybe it's been a long time since you've really had conversations about faith with people. So maybe you want to learn how to talk about faith. Maybe you want to say, this is something I want to learn. This is something I want to be better at. Maybe you want to learn about how to have a Sabbath, for example. This is something that a lot of us don't know how to do. I don't know how to do it. And it's something I've been trying to learn because last couple of years, especially this last year and a half, just functioning like on the edge of burnout in some ways. And I've realized I don't know how to be restored. carrying a lot of burdens in the last year and a half. You don't know how to be restored. So maybe you want to learn how to have a Sabbath and what the Sabbath is all about. Maybe you want to maybe you want to study the Bible differently. I don't know how many of you read the Bible and like have any kind of a devotional life or quiet time, but maybe you want to decide, I'm going to do something differently. So maybe you want to read a book of the Bible, like take a gospel, and when you read through the gospel, study more in depth than you usually do. For example, something that I've done at times, I'll read through the gospel, and every time I come across an Old Testament quote, every time that the gospel, gospel writers like Matthew will say, this happened to fulfill an Old Testament quote, or every time that Jesus quotes an Old Testament verse, I actually take the time to go back and read those verses and read the context and read what was going on, and then ask myself, why did Jesus quote this Old Testament verse? What was going on? What's the story that Jesus is quoting? Why did Matthew, for example, say that this fulfilled that? So, or maybe you want to say, I really want to, I want to do better at prayer. And Aaron, Aaron, it is a good thing to learn. Figure out what is it that restores us, and how do we get restored? How do we build that into our lives? Sometimes, Aaron, what I've learned is in this area of what restores us, one of the reasons that I am not good at it is because for whatever reason I feel guilty about it. Because something restores my soul, it almost feels, like, wow, is it really legitimate for me to take time to do this if it's something that I enjoy that's restoring? And of course it is. Of course it is. The word recreation comes from that idea of being recreated. That's what recreation is, recreate. Now, a lot of our recreation doesn't recreate us, it just wears us out in a different way. But that's what I've been learning, Aaron, about the Sabbath, that the Sabbath is meant to restore us, to recreate us. And I'm learning that. That's this thing that I'm learning and trying to work on. But do that. Learn something new. It's exciting to learn a new thing. And what you find when you learn a new thing, at first it comes in big chunks and it's enthusiastic and it energizes us. But after a while, it becomes part of us. And we learn in smaller pieces. And there's nothing wrong with that. So for those of you who sometimes think, when I came to faith, when this was all new, it was exciting. It was I couldn't wait to go to church on a Sunday morning. Couldn't wait to be with people. Couldn't wait to learn. But after a while, that diminishes, that enthusiasm. We start to think there's something wrong with me, and there's not. It's normal. The learning curve kind of diminishes a little bit, and we start to get to the place where we learn out of necessity. Everything isn't new anymore. And it's a good place to be. So figure out what it is that you can learn something new, read the Bible in a different way, learn a new practice, learn how to do a word study. I love doing word studies in the Bible, and I don't have time to talk about this, but if you're interested, it's very easy. You don't have to know Greek, you don't have to know Hebrew, but there's all kinds of fun ways that you can do word studies in the Bible and figure out, what does this word mean and how does it get used? And like heaven, for example, I remember we did a summer study one time on heaven, and it was fascinating to me because heaven doesn't mean what we think it means when we talk about it. And that's partly because like English words don't translate. I got to finish up. English words don't translate so neatly into the words in the Bible. Anyway, all that to say, so do something like that, but do not be discouraged if you find yourself at times thinking, wasn't long ago back in the day, I was so enthusiastic. Every time I picked up the Bible, I couldn't get enough of it. And that's not true anymore. And when that happens to you, don't be discouraged. It's normal, but don't let it stop you either. Learning is going to come in smaller pieces. Growth is going to come in smaller pieces, but it's something that you can engage in. You can decide, it's time for me to learn a new thing. And let that push you out of your comfort zone, and everything will be new. And yeah, I'm glad, Ann. So we're going to be doing the book of Daniel in our Wednesday night Bible study. We'll be going through the book of Daniel and learning new things. So anyway, went too long. Sorry about that. But yeah, so it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Those early days when we're learning a new thing, it's exciting. It's invigorating. Sometimes, you're at work and you think, oh, I can't wait to get home and get back to whatever it is because it's exciting. But that slows down. Always does. It always does. It's just the nature of life. We stop learning in big chunks and we start learning in smaller pieces, but we're still learning. So do that. Practice that. Try to think of what can I learn to do? What new thing can I learn? I think some of you and other people are learning to knit and crochet on Wednesday night, and that's a fun thing. So I'm doing that right now with my tractor. The learning curve is steep, learning big chunks, all kinds of things I'm learning that I never knew before. And it's fun. Sometimes I'm thinking, I can't wait till Monday. I can't wait till next Monday when I get some time to putz around with my tractor. But anyway, do that, learn a new thing. So let me pray for us. And good to see you all this morning. And let me pray for us, and then we can get on with our days. So let me pray. God, thank you for our brains and our minds. And God, I thank you for the enthusiasm that we feel when we are learning a new thing, especially, God, when it comes to faith. Those of us who came to faith, and it was a big change. God, some of us remember those days when we're just so enthusiastic and we learned in big chunks, and it's like we couldn't get enough. Couldn't wait to be at church, couldn't wait to learn more, couldn't wait to read the Bible. And it was all new and it was exciting. And God, it's inevitable that diminishes. And God, I pray for people who struggle and who sometimes think, well, why don't I feel that way? Where's the enthusiasm? Where did it go? God, it's just normal that as something becomes part of our life, it just becomes just who we are. And it's a sign of maturing, and that's good. So God, I pray that you'd reassure people who might struggle a little bit with that. But I pray, God, also that you'd remind all of us that there's more to learn. There always is. So I pray, God, that you'd maybe push us out of our comfort zones a bit. Maybe you'd find ways to say, hey, here's a new thing to learn. God, for all of us who are thinking, well, what would it be for me? I pray that through your Spirit, you'd show us, you reveal what it is that we could be learning. And I pray that you'd inspire us through that you'd motivate us, and that you'd restore to us this enthusiasm for learning a new thing. And then, God, change us and transform us into the people you want us to be. Pray for everybody who's listening and plugged in. God, I pray that as they think about this, maybe you have something for them. Help each person to know what that is. Give us back, God, our joy and our enthusiasm for our faith. And I pray that you'll do that this day. So thank you very much, God, for who you are. Thank you for your faithfulness to us. Thank you for how you've created us to be learners always. And I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, everybody. Well, love you all, and hope you guys have a good day. And see you on Thursday. Love you. Goodbye.